It's Kenny Rogers and some special friends
Hello, boys.
that make Monday and Tuesday, November 28th and 29th, two special nights.
How'd you know?
I'm a gambler. I'm supposed to know.
When Kenny Rogers, Linda Evans, and Bruce Boxleitner star in The Gambler, the adventure continues.
You ain't gonna let things get dull around here, are you?
Not for long.
Watch out.
Play it right. You got to know when to hold up, know when to fold up, know when to walk away, and know when to run. You never count your money. When you're sitting at the table, there'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done.
Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of coloniabook.com and this is my good friend and co-host, Margot D. of Book and Fitchick.
Hi, everyone.
I have a little bit of a, I don't know, some kind of a bug, some kind of a non-pandemic-y bug. It seems. So apologies for my little kind of throat frog that I've got going on. Now, if you saw the title of this episode and you've never heard our show before, you may be curious as to why we're covering this movie. And the short answer is that we had a busy week.
With the election.
It's a lot going on. So here's the deal. We try to give you a brand new episode every single week. And so sometimes we can't always do like a misery like we did last week. You know, we can't always do a full piece of literature that has been adapted into a movie. And so sometimes we consider sources, other literary sources that have been adapted into movies. We'll look at plays, short stories, novellas, and even poems and songs as we are doing today. And this song was such a juggernaut. I was kind of afraid to listen to it this week. I don't know about you, Margot, because
I was worried it'd be an earworm.
I knew that as soon as I heard it all the way through, that I would, and in fact, that's exactly what I held out till yesterday. And sure enough, all day yesterday, as I was, coughing and hacking, it's here in my mind now. And I'm excited to talk about, I think this song, as we said, this song was everywhere when you and I were kids. Everywhere. It was the crossover hit. He is such a crossover artist. And he also did a little bit of dabbling in acting. Not terrible.
No. We've seen worse.
I definitely seen worse. But I think even so, underrated. I'm going to say it. I think Kenny Rogers is underrated. Even though he was such a massive presence in American culture and influenced so many other artists, I think we just don't talk about Kenny Rogers enough. Especially nowadays, there seems to
Michael McDonald.
Michael McDonald. People are like all into the Michael McDonald.
I'm there too.
And he's Kenny Rogers. I'm sorry, Kenny Rogers makes Michael McDonald look like amateur night at the Barona Casino. But we'll get into that now. Maybe you have opinions about this. I bet you do. Maybe you'd like a place to share it with other listeners of this podcast. You'd like to meet some of them, interact with us. There's a few places on the internet where you can do that, and we would love to have you.
We're always looking for suggestions. We just, Justin, I believe this week gave us a couple of great suggestions for the holidays. One of them is Bell, Book, and Candle. We're definitely looking for Christmas. So if there's Christmas songs that turn into great movies, let us know. We do have a basic Facebook page, but we're much more interactive in our Facebook group, which you have to join. But we have 2 posts there. One's a list of the shows we've done before, and one is a list of ideas that people have. We just ask that they both be pretty easy to get. They need to be on a streaming app, or we have to be able to get them. We can't take DVDs and VCRs. Sorry, Margot, my cat's climbing up my leg as I'm talking to you. We're on Twitter and Instagram and Threads at Book versus M Movie. And we have an old-timey email, book versus movie podcast, spelled it all out, at gmail.com. Send us your suggestions there. Or if you would like some stickers, please email us with your address and one of us will drop them in the mail for you.
And if you really enjoy the show and would like to help keep the lights on for us, you can support us on Patreon.
Patreon. I want to thank Jay Clark for joining our Patreon page. We have we've been doing the show for 9 years. So what we've decided to do in our regular feed, we have 2 years worth of shows, and there's lots of Christmas episodes and some Stephen King in there, everything you like. And then everything before that, we put up on the Patreon wall. Recent episodes we put up there: Stand By Me, Phantom of the Opera, Little Women, the Ghost and Mrs. Muir. Just some really great episodes are up there. We would really appreciate it if that's what you want to do and you want to support us and you have the means to do so. Wonderful. If you don't, if money's tight, we totally understand. If you could just leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts, or seriously, just tell a friend about the show. We'd be most grateful. It helps us find our people.
I'm looking at the Wikipedia page, and what's kind of weird is it says that his birth name is Kenneth Ray Rogers Sr. I don't think anybody's birth certificate names them as a senior. But anyway, no, he did have a couple of kids later on. But okay, look. I mean, first of all, I think Kenny Rogers, talk about Christmas. When I think about Kenny Rogers, the first thing I think about is the Kenny and Dolly Christmas special. Kenny and Dolly in their ski sweaters. If you've never seen it, look it up on YouTube. You're welcome. But Kenny Rogers is such an interesting figure. The first kind of group that we know him from, or that you and I know him from, maybe a lot of these folks are too young to remember, a group called The First Edition. And they had this amazing hit called I Just Dropped In to See and yeah. They added this, it was such a great mix of voices. I didn't know this until this week, but apparently that song was first recorded by Jerry Lee Lewis, of all people.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And his version actually is really cool. It's very good. So they redid it. They added that, that kind of psychedelic. So you have Kenny Rogers, who's the lead vocalist. The sound is kind of like a funk, psychedelic sound. And they had a woman in the group. Let me find your name. Thelma Camacho, who's from San Diego.
Oh.
Got her singing start at our Starlight Theater in Balboa Park, those of you who are from San Diego. And Thelma was an operatic singer. So that's why in the background, you get those great high notes behind Kenny's earthy, soulful kind of vibe. And it is an awesome song. If you only know Kenny from The Gambler, didn't even know this was Kenny Rogers, but if you know that's Kenny Rogers, it's totally Kenny Rogers.
It's so anyway, in The Big Lebowski. That's a huge section of The Big Lebowski is this song.
Huge, again, massive, massive hit. One of those hits that kind of goes on and on and on, never stopped being played on the radio. And then they also had their other hit. Now that hit's very psychedelic, as we said, but their other kind of big hit that First Edition had had a kind of a more country feel. And all of this is to say, I mean, he's from Texas, but I don't know that he was such a country guy.
I think he's pop
per se, but yeah, more poppy. And if you look at his career, it always is veering back to pop. But they had this song, and it was also done by somebody else first. Oh, What Is Your Name? I think Waylon Jennings did it first, but it's this song called Ruby, Don't Take Your Love to Town.
Yes.
Remember that? Ruby, don't take your love to town. And it's about this very
singing today, Margot.
I know, with my cold voice. It came out in 1969, and it actually was written about a veteran who had come back from the Pacific Theater in World War II, but he references an Asian war, and everybody assumed that it was about Vietnam. But anyway, it's about this disabled vet who has come home from war, and his sweet little wife, who's much younger than he is running out. She doesn't even care anything about him. She's making herself up. She's going to go out for a night on the town. And Ruby, Don't Take Your Love to Town was another mega, mega hit. And I think they also did a little movie. I tried to find it. I could not find it. A First Edition did a film to kind of try to keep it together, keep their career, that train going. But it ran out of steam. And Kenny was just too big. Too big.
The 70s were coming. He had to go.
Oh, he had to go rule the 70s. He did so many duets. I can't even think of all of the duets that he, of course, famously paired with Dolly. Islands in the Stream. That's
written by Barry Gibb.
Written by Barry Gibb. Well, you know.
I know.
I know. Even with all of the when we talked about Saturday Night Fever, which we did because it was based on a magazine article, we talked about how that whole album was like all that was on the radio. Even so, I think he's so underrated as a songwriter. But he did duets with,
Tammy Wynette.
Sheena Easton, Tammy Wynette. What's the one from Canada?
Dottie
Snowbird
West. Anne Murray.
Yes.
Kim Carnes.
He just has a voice that is like, you can't mismatch his voice with any other kind of voice. Like, it sounds good no matter what you put it up against. Whether it's that operatic singer in First Edition or Dolly or Sheena Easton, I mean, Lionel Richie. I saw there's a great clip on YouTube of Kenny and Lionel singing The Gambler.
He sang it everywhere. He sings it live too. I mean, you could tell. I mean, his voice is gorgeous. It's just, and it's one of those like Ode to Billy Joe. It really lends itself to a movie because it's telling a story, and you're just trying to figure out the story. So we should say that the writer of the piece is actually a man named Don Schlitz. I always think of the Schlitz beer. He's someone who's in the Country Music Hall of Fame. He's written so many. He wrote this when he was very young. He was like 23, 24. His father had just died, and he wrote this song, and he tried to get other people to record it. But Kenny is the one who released it in 1978. But he's also written for Lori Morgan, the Judds, Loretta Lynn, Randy Travis, the Bellamy Brothers, Mary Chapin Carpenter. I was like, this man Don Schlitz is an incredible songwriter. And so it's his material that Kenny is coming in. Kenny had a big hit with Lucille, which is one of those songs I can't get out of my head as soon as it starts playing. I mean,
there's so many. Lady. And he was although he didn't write this song, and he also didn't write any of the other songs I think I mentioned, he was also a very gifted songwriter, sweet music man. Anyway, he in his own right. And I think that's part of why his performances of these other songs are so good, is that he understands like how to get into the story of the song. And you're right, it's very much like Ode to Billy Joe, that it's a compelling story. You want to know what's going to happen. And also, it has a catchy chorus.
You wish, like, as a songwriter, you could come up with something like this. Because it's so catchy, and yes, it's an earworm, but it's so enjoyable, and it's actually great advice too. I think on top of that, I don't even play poker, but I get, metaphorically speaking, from what's it's coming from. Yeah,
it's not bad advice. I don't hate it as life advice. No.
So Kenny records this in 78, huge smash. And then he's on The Muppet Show, which is where I remember this from when I was a kid. And he's on the old train car with a bunch of old Muppets. And we were just saying off the air, we forget that the gambler dies. Like, the whole point is he's telling a story and then he croaks and then he's gone. So that was just like the last gift he gave somebody was all this life advice. Yeah. 1980 comes around, and I don't know if this is Kenny's first appearance on film. He did a lot of movies. There's like Six Pack.
It's not. I think Six Pack is before this, or like right before this.
Yeah.
And we should talk about the official title of this movie is Kenny Rogers is
the Gambler.
The Gambler. And I even found it somewhere listed as Kenny Rogers is the Gambler. As the Gambler with Bruce Boxleitner. That's the whole title.
And the next one is Kenny Rogers as the Gambler, the adventure continues. Kenny Rogers as the Gambler, part 3, the legend continues.
Spoiler alert, the Gambler in the movie does not die at the end because we have to have a very long franchise. There's a lot of, apparently we thought there were a lot of untapped stories in the Old West that we had to.
You know, we have that going on now.
I know.
There are many Westerns on TV now. And I'm not the audience. My mother was this audience. She loves these stories, but it's not normally my jam. But I also kind of get it. It's sort of that idea of a simpler time when you could just have a dream and you get a ticket and you go on a train and you start a new life somewhere. This movie also is, I have to say, I thought it was pretty dark in spaces.
Agree.
I think it's, I would say that I would actually give a trigger warning for DV domestic violence.
Oh, definitely, absolutely. In a couple of places,
in a few places, there's times where a woman gets hit, and it's just sort of like that. It's a part of the story, like the guy's a creep who's doing it, but anyway.
Yeah. So, is there a trailer? I couldn't find a trailer.
I have a trailer-ish kind of thing that somebody was kind enough to put together. They sort of took all the little movies. I think there's 5 Gambler movies and put them together. I'll play the Geico commercial at the end credits because that's where.
Okay.
That's a fabulous one. Here we'll play this. But we should just say it's a story about a gambler. He meets these men on a train. He gives the guy his whiskey and lights a cigarette, and the man's just saying, no one to hold them, no one to fold them, no one to walk away, no one to run. And he's, because this is a young man.
He doesn't die.
Yeah. Then he dies. And so he's going to pick up where he left off, and he's going to move on with his life. So let's play this trailer, and then we'll talk about this movie.
You got to know when to hold on, know when to fold on, know when to
If I hadn't come along when I did, you'd be in one hell of a fix right now. I'm a gambler. I learned to read cards, and I learned to read faces. And yours tells me you're running a bluff.
You got to know when to hold on, know when to fold on, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your money.
It wouldn't be big time poker without Brady Hawks.
Why don't I just save us some time? Winner takes all.
When the deal is done.
How about it? You there?
There were a lot. I remember this being on television.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And this was like when we've talked about some of the other, we've done a few made for TV, like Elvis and Me, and of course Harper Valley PTA, where it's hard to explain how it is in the old days to these young people today, that when stuff was on TV, you just had to watch what was on TV.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't be like, hey, like you and I are doing today, like, hey, let's find that interview that Kenny Rogers did in 1984 to prevent. There was none of that.
No.
There was none of that. And so whatever was on TV, everybody watched it, and everybody talked about it at work or at school the next day. So this was, because this song was such a massive, massive hit. It was, again, I can't stress enough how ubiquitous this song was. We all watched this movie, and I think for a lot of us, it was the first time seeing him on screen.
Yeah, except on talk shows and stuff. But him acting, yes. We also talked about Urban Cowboy before. That was based on a magazine article.
Yes.
So there's this whole thing, the late 70s into the 80s of country
Very
music
cowboy.
hitting the pop charts. So this is a song. I was a white kid in Pennsylvania. Like was on a farm or anything like that. And all my friends listened to this.
Kid in California, and same deal. What's the Dukes of Hazzard?
Yes, Dukes of Hazzard. There's Burt Reynolds movies I'm trying to think of. Like, there's a lot of just sort of like, just like goofy Southern people laughing and having a great time and making fun of the city folks because we have sticks up our butts and we just don't know how to let loose and have fun. I get it. And so like I said, this music was super, super catchy, and he was very, very popular. Urban Cowboy was a very popular movie, and I think it was rated R, but that soundtrack was everywhere. This is all like in the zeitgeist. It makes total sense. And it's easy. They filmed Little House on the Prairie, around this time. You just use that set, I'm convinced.
It says that they filmed in Tucson, and at the end it says that they filmed in Tucson. But did they film it all in Tucson?
I don't think so.
Because it awfully looks like the hills of MASH.
It does look like the hills of MASH.
Sort of like Thousand Oaks, Santa Monica, Malibu area of Southern California, for those of you who are familiar with it. So I think they did maybe some shots there as well. And I got to say, not mad at the story that we came up with, the story choices.
Yeah.
Good. I think good choice to bring in Bruce Boxleitner.
Okay.
Who is this
handsome Bruce Boxleitner. I remembered this young Bruce Boxleitner on my TV screens. Like, oh yes, please.
Yeah,
he's cute.
Yeah, and he's good. He's funny.
Mm-hmm.
If you're thinking about it in the framework of the song, he's the character that Kenny Rogers is in the song. And Kenny Rogers is the one who's playing the older, more experienced gambler.
Hey, it's good old boy Mike.
This is good old boy Dave.
From Sips, Suds, and Smokes. Sips, Suds, and Smokes covers wine, tea, coffee, distilled spirits, whiskey, scotch, beer, cigars.
People whose first name starts with Q.
Bad fake British accents.
And we always take time to make fun of the people of Alabama.
Banned once again.
It's a 1-hour episode that's mildly entertaining for about 22 minutes.
I think mildly would be a vast improvement.
Well, we do have the only beer show with the Holy Man. We talk about these products and rate them with our unique rating system, like our Suds 5 rating. Do you really have something better to do with your life for an hour than actually listen to this show?
Well, don't make them think about it.
Well, join us on this radio station, podcast network, or via our Android app.
$20.
See your 20. I'll raise you another 20.
20. Ten bets. 5. 4.
Well. Gentlemen, this little old ace is gonna cost you, $50.
Where you from, boy?
Around
What's your name?
Billy Montana.
Who taught you to cheat like that, Billy Montana?
It's a mighty harsh thing to say, mister.
That kid's cheating. Seems he's not the only one cheating in this game. Why don't you two take your game somewhere else?
Let's talk about our cast here. So again, we've got Kenny Rogers as Brady Hawks, the gambler. We've got Bruce Boxleitner as the young gambler, Billy Montana, who is on his way. Is it San Francisco?
San Francisco, not Sacramento, Margot. San Francisco.
Not Sacramento.
Not Sacramento, because
That's
Sacramento
a long train
fits
ride
in there.
from wherever, Yuma? Ooh,
oh my
that's
God.
a long ride. We've got Jeremiah, who's this little boy. So we learned that the reason that the gambler, Kenny, is on the train is not to go to the poker tournament, although he is a renowned poker player. He is going to Yuma to see, he has learned that he has a son with his former wife. And so he's going to go and meet his son and perhaps rescue his former wife from her new abusive husband. Mm-hmm. We also have Lee Purcell, who we talked about when we talked about Valley Girl.
Who's beautiful.
Gorgeous. And very good in this, I think.
She's fantastic. It's such an interesting character.
Yeah.
We have Eliza, Christine Belford, who's beautiful.
So we have Eliza is Brady Hawk's, the gambler's ex-wife. She left him. We never really learned why she left him. Didn't tell him that he had a son, so she left, pregnant, presumably. And then we also have Harold Gould, who plays the owner, Mr. Stowbridge, the owner of the rail yard. Now, for those of you who are fans of the Golden Girls, Harold Gould played Miles, Rose's boyfriend. He also played Rhoda's dad on Rhoda.
That's where I know him from.
Yeah, me too. I mainly know him from Rhoda, but he also played Miles on the Golden Girls. And Christine Belford, who plays the gambler's former wife, she was also on the Golden Girls as Rose's daughter. So for you Golden Girls fans, this is going to be a real treat. Then we have her bad. He's the baddie of the piece. There's actually two baddies. There's Mr. Stowbridge, the railroad guy. And then you have Roof, which I think is short for Rufus.
I think so. It's just spelled Rufe, Ruth Bennett.
Yeah.
That's Clue Gallagher. Gallagher.
Yeah,
I always say
scary.
Gallagher. It's Gallagher. And
yes, it's Gallagher, isn't it?
Yeah, he was in the Miramax had that Project Greenlight show, and one of the seasons they did a horror movie, and it was Clue Gallagher's son that directed it, And they made a big deal about Clu Gallagher because he's a big-time character actor. He was in everything in like the 60s, 70s, and 80s. He was always busy. So he plays, and he's so good in this.
He's very good.
Yeah.
He's super good.
He's very method, you could tell.
Fella at the post office says it went to somewhere in Kansas. Who's in Kansas? Who? What? Brady Hawks.
It's no law against writing your own father.
So she told you.
I kept asking.
What'd you tell him in the letter?
Nothing.
Told him where to find you. You told him about me. Huh? You tell me now what you wrote down in that letter.
Let him be.
You put him up to this?
What?
You wrote Hawks a letter. I want to know what he said.
Well, that's Jeremiah's business.
Not if it brings Hawks here looking.
And you'll beat it out of him, won't you?
If I have to.
And then we have Lance Legault as Doc Palmer.
Not a lot happens, so spoiler alert.
It's like, yeah, I mean, there's different conflicts. I would say one thing I have to say is like, there's several women that look exactly alike. That look,
we have definitely a look. Like maybe we just had the one makeup artist and stylist on set,
or the director had a type, and that was like blonde and gorgeous. Which so sometimes I had a hard time telling them apart. But we have Bruce Boxleitner, Billy Montana. He meets up with the gambler. They meet up with each other when he's trying to cheat his way out of a card game to get some money. Right. And at the same time, he also meets Jenny, who is this very sweet lady who's going to Sacramento, and she's married and she's a lady. But she has a past.
But don't forget, she's a lady. Lady. I'm your knight in shining. Kenny, as we were saying off the air, we were being very dirty. I mean, he's very sexy. He's a bear of a guy. Like I was saying to her, like he's a guy you can have some ribs and coleslaw and hang out, and he'd just be easy peasy. There's something very attractive about that. He doesn't work too hard either. I mean, they make his character. They go on his charm, but he has considerable charm. So let's talk of this. Let's get this part of it out of the way, because Kenny Rogers is not. Was never invited to go on the actor studio, I don't think.
How did you work on that limp, Kenny?
I think this is actually very clever. They do a couple of really clever things to make the most of Kenny's acting, which again, we're not mad at. It's fine.
It's fine.
First of all, the character is extremely laid back, so he doesn't have to do a lot of extreme emotions. He never raises his voice, and that's good for Kenny. And there's one shot I saw, where he's talking to the little boy who is his son, and they do a long shot or a full body shot of him talking to the son, and you can see in this full body shot, like he's really kind of doesn't know what to do with his body as he's acting. And that's the only time that I saw it. Like the rest of the time, they disguise it very cleverly. One, because if you've ever had to take an acting class, as we sometimes, in the course of college or whatever, you may have to do speech, if you're studying speech or whatever. One of the hardest things is knowing what to do with your body and your hands. Like to just stand there naturally is super hard to do. Your body wants to fidget because you're nervous and trying to think of what you're trying to say and remember what your lines are and remember what you're supposed to say next. And so it's a very natural, like human reaction to want to fidget, kind of move your body as you're talking, which is weird. Like during COVID, I noticed on the news a lot because everybody was interviewing everybody else via Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
And it drove me crazy that every single time I turned on the news to watch somebody being interviewed on Zoom, the interviewee, not the anchor, because they know what to do with their bodies, but the interviewee would be in their desk chair at home and rocking back and forth and rotating back and forth through the whole. And I'd be like, can you just somebody tell them to hold still? Anyway, so they help Kenny out a lot. Number one, by mostly shooting him from the chest up. It's mostly real tight shots of Kenny, like chest up or even tighter in on his face.
Just that beard.
Just that beard, which is the beard's doing a lot of heavy lifting for us. And then the other thing is that when he does have to move on screen, as Margos said, they've given him a limp. We have this story about, I guess, during the Civil War, he was injured and now he has a cane and he's got a limp. And that really helps a lot because he's got one hand that's always full and always got something to do. So I think that really helps sell his acting a great deal. A great deal. Let the clues and the Stowbridges, let them be the hotheads yelling, throwing things, throwing punches. Let them do that part. And Kenny, you just be the cool gambler. And I think it works very, very well. I think the women are very good in this.
Yes.
There's not a lot of them, but they're very good.
No, they have something to do. So there's the one hand, he has this Jenny person, and I don't know if she's supposed to be a love interest for, well, she says she's married. Once again, she's married, she's a lady, but she's a lady who has a past. Mr. Stowbridge is the man who, when they're on the train, he gambles on the train, but he also wants to use her as stakes, and they make a big deal about how they, she's like, no, I'm married. You can't just, win me as a prize. I did like the scene where Stowbridge sends somebody to their car and he's insisting that she go with him.
Excuse me, ma'am. Mr. Stowbridge would like you to join his party.
I don't know Mr. Stowbridge.
Seems he knows you, miss.
Mrs. Tell Mr. Stowbridge thank you. I'm not interested.
I'm afraid he insists.
I have a husband. I don't think he'd approve.
When Mr. Stowbridge wants something, he usually gets it. If I were you, I'd do as he asks.
I told you, I'm a married woman. My husband is a very influential man.
Make it easy on yourself. I don't think she wants to go to your party. I'd stay out of it, mister. Mr. Stowbridge runs this train. In fact, the whole railroad. Let's go. Give me the gun. I'm gonna get your head, kid! I don't think the lady wants to go to your party.
To the back, and she says, no, I'm married. You can't do that. The whole thing is that at one point she was a sex worker, and so they're trying to shame her. And the sex workers in this movie tend to be very cheerful. And there's a couple of scenes where Bruce Boxleitner sees the one woman who's just like, hey, when you get your paycheck, he's like, okay. It's very sex positive, my point.
It is remarkably so. But for something that was on primetime television for a general family audience, as Margos said earlier, we have some real dark moments, and also, I agree, it is rather sex positive.
It was, very randy, But he had a child with this this other woman, Eliza. Sorry, so Eliza and Grady had a fling. I don't know if they were even married or not. I think that, but they split up, and she's now
it's not clear.
Unclear.
Yeah, they had a home. Apparently, because he goes back to their home to find it abandoned.
That's right. That whole,
and she has left him. But no, you're right. I don't think they ever say that they were actually married.
But she's with this Clu Gallagher now, who's a real creep, Roof. And he beats her son. and he's abusive to his mother. And he knows that he found out only recently. He's a really good actor too, the little actor who plays the kid. But he finds out that his dad lives someplace in St. Louis or whatever, and so he writes him a letter.
Dear Pa, I know you don't know me, but my name's Jeremiah, and I'm your son. I didn't know who my father was till a while back, but my mom said you didn't even know there was a me. I didn't want to bother you none, but now I got no other way, so I'm writing to let you know the fix we're in, Mom and me, and we need your help.
Saying, hey, just found out about you. Mom's dating, is married to a real jackass. I want to find you because either take me with you or you got to rescue. Yeah, help. Yeah. Asking for help. And he, according to him, didn't know that the kid was his until that he got that letter. But now he feels, of course, responsible for making sure the young man's okay. And it's like I said, it's scary. I mean, he's a real bad, mean dude. So the kid is, he travels with Kenny. There's lots of scenes of gambling because it's about a gambler. I get that.
It is, it's called The Gambler.
Poker is not my favorite sport to watch. My parents loved poker. I just did not inherit any of that.
But also like fake acting poker. And another thing here, one of the things that struck me as very odd about this film that I didn't remember at all, and certainly didn't anticipate. First of all, we only hear that song over the opening credits and over the closing credits. Mm-hmm. There's not a hint of a violin motif of doo, 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 doo. There's almost no score to this whole movie. The whole thing occurs with zero music in the background, except for a couple of, there's maybe all of 5 minutes of score if you go through the whole thing. There's maybe like to show passage of time, or like I think when he goes to the house that he shared with Eliza and finds it abandoned, I think there's like a little musical moment there. But for the most part, like the poker games, the fights, all of the things where there would be or like music, the train traveling through the old wet, no music, zero music. Not sure why we made that choice.
He never sings. He never sings.
No.
No, he never hums. He doesn't. No. He doesn't go to church and sing out of a. I was like, what?
Nobody has so much as a comb with a piece of wax paper on that train, like to make music. Nothing.
I know.
Nobody's whistling even.
No one's humming. Nothing. He's not going to church and singing along to the hymns. Nothing. So that's something like, yeah, exactly. He's just there to be the gambler. He's just there to act, which is fine. It's fine.
That's okay.
Like I said, it's only an hour and a half, and it's just basically he rescues spoiler. We do spoil the details. He does rescue his son, and he does have a meeting with the former flame, and I don't know why she doesn't go with him. It doesn't, like, he beats up Clue Gallagher, Roof. He and Bruce Box, and I love it. I love the glass down the bar thing. When you drag somebody down a bar. They
give Kenny some real fight choreography in this thing.
Yes,
it's kind of impressive.
It is. It's. But and Bruce Boxleitner is a great buddy for him, and he backs up. I don't know why, but the son goes with him and Jenny, but she doesn't. She's going to leave Roof. Roof is out of the picture. He's got to check out of Dodge.
But not just yet, for some reason.
Yeah, and there's still some chemistry between Eliza and Grady, but he's kind of like, all right, guess we're split. We're going to go our ways. And she's like, okay, I'll see you in a while.
They shake hands. Okay.
Yeah. And then her son is just leaving with him. From what I understand, I think that's what's happening.
You coming with us?
Not now.
gonna do about Jeremiah?
He needs to be with you for a while. You ought to get to know him.
You be okay?
Yeah.
Goodbye, Eliza.
Goodbye.
But
oh yeah, that's totally what happens, because in the Gambler 2, he's with that son. Yeah, it's kind of a weird ending, because at some point the son, when they're chatting, when they first kind of meet up and they're chatting, the son says something to the effect of that his mother is still in love with the Gambler. And
of course she is
stuck in this, well, sure. And is stuck in this relationship with Clue, who's very powerful, like runs this town that they live in. I think it's Yuma again. And therefore she really can't get away, because no matter where she goes, he sends people after her. She's tried to leave and he sends people after her to try to get her. So I don't know, if it's not clear if she's afraid to leave him. We're not really sure why she's leaving. She says, yeah, to the Gambler, like, oh, you take our son, he needs to get to know you, and da-da-da-da. But she doesn't like hug her son goodbye. Or
wouldn't you be crying? I would be hysterical,
inconsolable, even if I thought it was the best thing.
Because it's not like you're going to like text each other along the way. This kid's gone. Anything can happen to him.
A last hug and words to my son.
Words of wisdom. Something. Yeah. I will see you Christmas Day in San Francisco, just so you know. Like something like that. Yeah.
All she does is shake hands with Kenny and send him on his way. Yeah, it's a very head scratcher of an ending.
Because he also says, I watched it 3 times, because Grady and Billy are talking. Tommy Monte, Billy Monte, yeah, it's Bruce and Kenny are talking, and he's like, well, you got the kid now. Why don't we go to San Francisco? And he's like, I don't want to raise him around a bunch of saloons. And then he just says, well, you could put him to school, and then you and I could go someplace. Like, wait a second, you're just going to send him off to school? You're not going to hang out with him? You're going to just go with... They
literally just established he's coming along with you to spend time with you.
His mother just said... And I'm like, is he going to be with Jenny? Because there's a whole scene also with Jenny where she's like, I'll take care of him.
Yeah.
We'll look out for each other. And then the very next scene, he's like talking to the mother.
Throw him in a school.
Maybe these questions are answered in the second one. I did not watch the second one. Normally I go down those...
No. I mean, my apologies to our listeners, but no, I could not. I just took a little peek at every single one of the other, and they go well into the 90s. Let me tell you, they go.
Oh yeah,
with varying degrees of production value. The later ones do have a score, bigger names, I would say. But in the second one, the one that immediately follows this one, it has a lot of the same cast. At least from what I saw, the bit that I saw, it's clear the boy is going with him. Bruce Boxleitner and Kenny Rogers and this boy are now
a trio
traversing the Old West.
What could possibly go wrong with that?
I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's totally fine.
He have guns. They drink. They gamble. And then let's just go to Deadwood. Sure.
The third one has a remarkable storyline, extremely sensitive, involving the Sioux Nation.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, Kenny's on their side. He wants to help them. So there's that at least.
It doesn't have Linda Evans.
I think that one does have Linda Evans.
I think she's second and fourth. She's so pretty. She's
gorgeous.
Gorgeous. Oh my God.
And it's very like Linda Evans' Big Valley. Those of you who remember the Big Valley.
Dynasty,
but like in that kind of westerny, Big Valley. Yeah, you're right. She's in second and fourth. Third one is Charles Durning as the bad guy.
We
Come
love
on.
Charles Durning.
I love Charles Durning. So we've still got Bruce Boxleitner. Anyway, so that's the one. I think the third one is the one, The Gambler, Kenny Rogers as the Gambler, Part 3, The Legend Continues.
Curly's Gold? I mean, like, what?
Yeah. And then the next one, then Part 4, The Gambler Returns, The Luck of the Draw. And that's the one with, I think that's the one with Dixie Carter as his love interest. From
Dixie
Designing
Carter.
Women. Yes, 1991. So like at peak Dixie. So that was kind of a big get, I think.
I think
so
they have Gene Barry, David Carradine, Chuck Connors, Brian Keith.
It's getting bigger and bigger at this point. You know, by the time we get to number 4, it's a lot. And then we've got the last one, which is 1994, The Gambler 5, Playing for Keeps.
But it has...
And we have a return of Bruce Boxleitner.
And we also have at the Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and Mariska Hargitay playing Etta Place.
Yes.
I mean, that's...
Yeah.
Okay, I'll probably watch that.
And supposedly, I tried to find this, somewhere, and this also didn't make any sense to me. There's supposedly an interview, like a late night talk show interview with Kenny, like in the 2000s, in the 21st century, where he's talking about like the possibility of a Gambler 6. He says something to the effect of like they wanted that the opening scene of this Gambler 6, which never was produced, but that the opening scene would have Kenny getting injured in a gunfight, which would account for like his he was older and
his advanced age.
He had some stuff. And so they were going to kind of disguise it. But I was like, but he already has a limp. Anyway, they never made it. But we haven't even talked about the chicken.
No, I was going to just say, do you remember that episode? It's of Seinfeld.
Not only do I remember the episode, but when I lived in New York City during those years, I lived there during the Seinfeld years. And Todd and I lived on the Upper East Side, and I worked at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And so I would walk through that neighborhood every day, back and forth to go to work. And there I used to pass the Kenny Rogers Roasters every single day to and from work. And I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, that Kenny Rogers? The Gambler? The Gambler has a chicken place? And it was very successful.
I think it was good. I had friends that swore by it, that they really liked it. Of course, he had many, many hits, but he didn't write as many songs as you'd think, Kenny Rogers. So maybe that's
because, listen, when Kenny Rogers sings a song, it's his forever.
It's his forever, but tell that to the publishing rights. I mean, I think he's got to invest his money somewhere. Like,
yeah, and it's funny, because I hadn't really thought about it until this week. That's probably, and it's probably also why. For all of those songs that he made, he must have made a lot of songwriters a great deal of money, right? And and I'm sure he made money off of his records, but nothing like a songwriting rights, would garner. And that was probably why he went into this business. He must have been quite savvy, because he went into like with the former CEO of Kentucky Fried Chicken, or like a founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken, or something. Like he got the top chicken people. But I think that maybe that is also why maybe he just loved touring. He toured and toured and toured and performed live until he literally could not do it anymore, until he literally could not stand up there and sing anymore. And he always sounded great. Even like as his voice aged, as I said earlier, like there's this video. I'll find it and put it in the Facebook group. It's a very late Kenny video, him and Lionel Richie singing The Gambler. And, he's a lot older and he doesn't have quite the range that he had in his younger. It's still phenomenal.
It's still Kenny.
Just for watching Lionel Richie dancing in the background, worth it. Worth every penny.
He retired in 2015 and it was called The Gambler's Last Deal. That was the name of his farewell tour. He passed away in 2020. Yeah, Kenny Rogers Roasters. I had friends that like swore to me it was like the best chicken they'd ever had. Like they really loved it. He was married several times,
showing up all over the place, like 5 times.
5 times with 5 kids.
We didn't even talk about, which he also didn't write, but they also made a movie about, I think, the Coward of the County. Remember?
That song is messed up.
It's a mess. It's a yeah. There's a lot, talk about domestic violence.
Yeah,
it's very violent.
Mm-hmm.
But that was another one that I think they made a movie out of Coward of the County as well.
It lent itself to a movie for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But that song is messed up.
But I cannot believe I forgot. I remember at the time because they were on television, but I forgot that they made gambler movie after gambler movie after gambler movie.
But how many, like I said, Old West TV shows, like I'm just like, how many are there? It's just not my thing, but there's so many.
It's not my favorite either.
Because I'm always like, but what about the Chinese immigrants and how they were treated? And what, I mean, it just, it really lends itself.
Bonanza.
Yeah. It just kind of, and for me, when people are like, oh, would you live any other time? I'm like, no, I like the internet. I like conveniences. I have no desire to do
I
without.
always wonder, like, when people ask that, what time are you talking about? Because if you're asking that, you probably want to live in some other time. What time? Give me a time.
When's it great for
Before
women?
World War II?
When's it great for women? I'll wait.
Not great for women. Not great for my people.
Gay people.
No.
I mean,
I'll take now. Thanks.
I'll take
tomorrow. I'll take,
but
after these Gen Z.
Yes. But they're a thing.
Kids.
I mean, I can see why. It goes down easy. Like you can put this on, flip through a magazine, or do your laundry, or bake cookies, or clean your house.
That's exactly. I was cooking while I was watching this movie.
And it's easy, and Kenny is a delight. He is, and I loved him pre-facelift. I mean, it's nice to see his real face.
I know that's the one thing. Like as you go through the gambler movies, like his face changes a lot.
Yeah.
And I never think he looks like people got really upset about it, and he looks bad. I just feel bad, like that he thought he needed to. I just thought he was so good looking the way. I know that's just that business, right?
Yeah.
But you're right. The Western. I don't know if it's like the idea of the lawlessness of it that gives it a kind of an interesting backdrop, and that's certainly something in this franchise. It's like there's just no law. There's no. Everybody has to kind of take the justice into their own hands. I mean, they just never stop making them. But yeah, book versus movie.
I'm going to take the book. I'm going to take the song. I so much enjoyed watching The Muppet Show again with Kenny Rogers. It's on Disney Plus. It's a delight. Listening to his music again and just his warmth. And the way he interacted with women was great. That's why he had so many hit singles with women. I think he liked women, maybe a lot. He was married 5 times, but
yeah, true. But he really, again, like his work with, and he's worked with men too, but his work with women in particular, is always just so good. And yeah, he must have been great to work with for a female artist because they loved working with him. They did it over and over
again. And he
never wasted an opportunity to get on stage with Kenny.
Yeah, I mean, he's very generous when he's performing with somebody. Some people don't share a stage very well, and he seems totally happy to do so.
Yeah,
and it's nice to watch, and it's just his voice goes down easy, man. It's
great. It's great. Y'all just get yourself. Okay, here's what I'm going to put in the Facebook group. I'll go right now as soon as we're done with this. I'm going to dig up that Christmas special, the Dolly Kenny Christmas, because everybody needs that in their lives. There's this one weird scene though where did I bring this up before? Where they're singing and there's those mannequins.
No,
I can't remember what song. There's this song. It's really weird. It's just a normal holiday song. The what do we call that? The premise of this Christmas special, and it was on regular television, was that Dolly and Kenny are it's very meta. It's a Christmas special about shooting a Christmas special, and they're up in a ski cabin because skiing was very big at this point. And so they're in this ski lodge shooting this Christmas special. And there's this scene where they're singing a Christmas carol. I don't remember which one it is. And they're in the kind of bar, like piano bar of the ski lodge. And it's filled with mannequins in ski wear. It's very creepy. It's weird. But the special's great. Yeah. I will put it in the Facebook group. And I'm going to also find that Kenny and Lionel. You just watch it. Just watch it. Just watch it. Yeah. It will delight you.
Speaking of delight, what we're covering next, we're both super, super excited about. It's The Sweet Smell of Success. The movie is available Amazon. It's available everywhere, but it's streaming on Amazon right now. It's based on a short story. We're going back to Burt Lancaster and Tony Curtis. It's New York City. Clifford Odets, I think, helped with the screenplay, if memory serves.
I kind of remember that, too. That's funny. Have we talked about Tony Curtis yet?
We should talk about him more.
Yeah.
I really like him as a performer. I think he's very, yeah. So that's coming up next time. Once again, please send us your suggestions. We're desperately looking for holiday ideas. Bell Book and Candle, though, is definitely on the list. All those places I mentioned at the top of the show. And once again, our email is bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com. And Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all of my social media callouts are at She's Not Your Mama. And where could they find you?
You can find me at Brooklyn Margot on Twitter, TikTok, on Blue Sky. Sorry, guys, we have to go to all these different places now. And then it's Brooklyn Fit Chick for my site, for Threads, and for Instagram. All right, everyone. No one to hold them, no one to fold them. I'm going to get me some chicken now. I want some roast chicken. I'm hungry. Here is Kenny Rogers, by the way, Geico ad before we go.
15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Yeah, everybody knows that.
Well, did you know that playing cards with Kenny Rogers gets old pretty fast?
You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your money when you're sitting at the table. What? You get it?
I get the gist, yeah.
Geico, 15 minutes.
Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We're a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You could find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. You could find us on Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram at Book versus a Movie. Just spelled it all out. We have a Patreon page. Type in there Book vs. Movie Podcast, where you can find 8 years worth of shows. You can follow Margot D on social media at Brooklyn Margot and also Brooklyn Fit Chick. You can find Margot P at She's Nacho Mama. Thank you again for listening, and please be sure to send along your suggestions for the show. Remember, the book needs to be easy to get your hands on, and the movie has to be streaming on a major platform. We will be back soon with a new episode.